Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sunday Morning Coffee with Caryn, episode 42, Superconscious Living. We are going to be diving super deep into the process of superconscious living today and really just having a great time. Just sharing this over to Facebook real quick and making sure that Instagram is turned on. Having a little bit of tech situations this morning as happens, but we are now here and good. So freaking happy to be here. Today's live stream is going to be so epic. It's going to be epic. It's going to be epic mostly because there is a lot of fire going on, and y'all know how much I love it when there is fire going on, because then I get to get my water on, because I'm already a very fiery person and a very earthy person. So I get my water on to help create that steam, to really create that the motion that's necessary for change. So let's get back over here, make sure that everyone can see everything. Perfect. Okay, so hopefully people will be jumping on. So today is really going to be talking about superconscious living again. So the step-by-step process of superconscious living. Superconscious living is my cornerstone course that I have created that is available inside of Superconscious Leaders. All of that information will be in the description below after the live stream is over. Instagram, it's up in the bio. You can join us in Superconscious Leaders there. And right now is a very prevalent time to be talking about living super consciously instead of just consciously. Consciousness still requires us to admit that there is, not even admit, but really live in this conflict, to really live in this duality. When you're living strictly in a conscious mindset, you still are thinking of integrity in a moral sense versus integrity being a physics issue, really. So what do I mean by this? If you look up the etymology of integrity, and long before we ever had the concept of what long before we ever had the concept of what it would be, of morals, really, of good and evil and bad and right and wrong and those sorts of things, we still had a concept of integrity. And what it meant was whole and complete, and there were no pieces missing. So when we say someone is in integrity, it means that what they are doing aligns with what they would always do. There's no difference between who you are when you are showing up as a thought leader than you are when you're having conversations with your neighbors, than you are when you are being interviewed on a late night show, as you are when you are taking the stage and taking an oath of office. So this integrity, you guys hear me call it fearless authenticity, but it's the same concept of that Jungian idea that I would rather be a whole person than a good person. Because being whole means that there are pieces of me that are really bad, that are really just not socially acceptable. And we can see where this dichotomy arises, because our entire carbon-based DNA, everything that we know to be true about ourselves, everything we know about how humans have grown and evolved, tells us that we are we're very survival based. We literally only care about our survival. It hasn't been until even the last couple hundred years, and I would even say the last 50 years, that we could really start to see ourselves as a whole human race. Okay? So of course, in only a 50-year period, hundreds of thousands of years of survival only, and my tribe against your tribe, and conflicts arising over what appeared to be limited resources. It's only really been in the last 50 years since we went to the moon that we've been like, maybe instead of having competing resources, we should learn how to distribute these resources so that everyone has a fair share. You know, you will never, ever, ever hear me say that I'm a proponent of Bernie Sanders. You will never, ever, ever hear me say that I agree with handouts of any sort. But I do believe in the redistribution of wealth, but I don't think it's going to be through government coercion. It's not going to be because the government comes in and tells all the rich people to give their money away. It's going to be because people with high integrity in who they are and what they are and how they serve will choose of their own free agency to give of their wealth. So when we're looking at big things super consciously, we're able to realize it is so important that we take time out of our daily lives to cultivate this, so that when we are met with huge things, huge conflicts in the world, in these larger ways that they're playing out globally and in global consciousness, we know our own integrity. We already know what our answer is going to be. And then we start work because we've worked on ourselves. We understand the depths of our own limitations, and every time we start coming up against a trigger, something that makes us want to pull back, something that makes us want to fight, instead we say, no, I'm going to actually question, why am I responding this way? Why is it that I feel victimized? Because every single conflict ever comes down to the idea of one person or country or group or whatever vying for the position of victim. Meaning, I feel victimized by what you're doing to me. Well, I feel victimized that you blame me for you feeling victimized. Okay? Or I'm the victim here because, and you can take any conflict ever between spouses, between siblings, between countries, between groups of ethnic races. It always like even the conflict in Bosnia back in the 90s, it all comes back down to, how many generations have you been told a story? How many generations has this exact same situation been playing out over and over and over again? And how much have you taken the time to question that story? How much have you taken the time to really and truly connect to, what if this isn't true? What if there is a way for us to exist outside of the construct of good and evil? What if we can just be whole? What if there is a way to exist outside of the construct of black and white, or poor and rich, or smart, like genius and imbecile? Beyond duality. Superconsciousness is teaching you how to do that, how to no longer be affected by your emotions, and instead question, why are you feeling that way? What belief am I holding that is causing disruption in my body now that I'm being met with new information? Now, this doesn't mean that you're constantly changing your mind so that the information fits with you. When you're in integrity, there is a whole lot of stuff that makes you really mad. There's a lot of rage. There's a lot of emotion. There's a lot of you feel like a call for justice. But you know, in superconscious living, that it's not about making sure everyone knows you're right. It's not about making sure that every single person understands what you're talking about. It's not about making sure that every single person is doing what you think is morally correct, because morals are subjective, but physics aren't. So if you're looking to live a life of true integrity, of having impeccable standards and supreme integrity, and radically trust that if you have those two things, that your life will become a constant stream of miracles. And when you're commanding miracles, you are changing the world. It doesn't really matter if other people agree with you or see you doing it, because you know that you are. As someone who's working towards lifting the veil of this illusion that we're only as big as our physical body, I often have been wondering this whole week, like, what's the point? What is the point of all of the conflict that's going on? What is the point of us even playing victims like this anymore? What is it? So many people in the spiritual community talk about how they know that they are eternal beings, how they know that they have chosen to be here, how they know that everything that's happened in their life has happened for the reason that it happened, for whatever reason, for a lesson. Talk about how they are infinite and how death is just an illusion. And then something like what's going on right now with the Black Lives Matter movement occurs, and it's like all of that stuff just goes out the window. I call it spiritual hypocrisy. It's a very interesting phenomenon that occurs, that it's okay for for me to believe that I'm infinite and all powerful and that I'm choosing my own way and no one and nothing has power over me and there's no way that anyone can victimize me, and even if horrible atrocities happen to me, I would know that they were happening for a reason, and that the reason was bigger than myself. But as soon as it's someone else, especially a historically oppressed group, all of a sudden that goes out the window. All of a sudden, George Floyd is no longer a sovereign being who played out a role that he chose in some other plane of consciousness. All of a sudden, everyone's up in arms about a very 3D fear of separation and no longer reaching outwards towards their psychic resources of, then what the fuck is the solution? I see the problem. The problem is abuse. And abuse is abuse is abuse is abuse is abuse. It shows up in 100,000 different ways, 15 different times a day. But at the core of it, abuse is about power and control. And other people believing that they have a right to assert power and control over others, primarily using anger and fear tactics. This is centuries, millennia old, coming back to survival. I have to be more intimidating than the bear or he's going to eat me. I have to outwit the bear by making things to kill the bear, to then skin the bear. Everything was about me first. How do I survive? What is dangerous? What is perceived as a threat? I am the victim of my life. I am victimized by nature. I am victimized by the wilderness. I'm victimized, and I will never ever do anything to perpetrate against my tribe, because if I get ostracized against my tribe, I'm out in the wilderness on my ass and I am for sure getting eaten by a wildebeest. So we are programmed for millennia to be victims of our lives. And again, only in the last 50 or so years have we truly seen ourselves as this whole collective, we're all humans living on this marble floating in space. And we're all connected to the plants and the animals and the oceans. And we're all living in this same physical reality together. So if that's the truth, then what new thoughts do we need to have a new reality on this physical plane? So the more you do your own personal work, the more your life is beautiful, miraculous, blissful, prosperous, moving in an upward flow. Your integrity is so strong in your channel of being able to move up, up, up and create more solutions, because you're no longer convinced that it's just you against the world or your group or your family against other people, but you realize, no, I will find the solution that will help the entire human race. I will find the solution that will help the entire solar system. I will find the solution that will help the entire galaxy. When you start thinking in super levels, in huge, 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 huge levels of the capacity of what you could actually create, you stop worrying all the time about how change isn't happening fast enough. You know that posting on Facebook and doing these things, yeah, it can be useful, but you're doing that once or twice throughout the course of a day, and the whole rest of the time you are pouring your creative energy into the solution, whether that be a grassroots movement, running for office yourself, um, connecting with your own senator, whatever it is. There are so many, connecting to extraterrestrials, to our star beings, to our soul families, to our inner earth beings, to all of the dragons, unicorns, angels, all of the other spiritual beings that we connect to. They have answers for us if we're just willing to get over our stubborn human pride and ask, what is the great solution to racism? Instead of looking at why does it exist, where is it, the fact that it's systemic, all these other things, which we've known and we've known and we've known, and yet we're not changing. You guys, I have to pull out the Albert Einstein quote right now. It's perfectly the perfect quote right now. And it goes along the lines of, because I don't have it perfectly memorized, the same mind that created a problem can't be the one that finds the solution. Meaning, whatever thinking created racism, we have to get out of that thinking before we're going to be able to find the solution to it. Whatever thinking created abuse of power in any sort, whether it's domestic violence or child slavery or inequality against women or the racism, systemic racism, poverty, any of those things, it's still abuse of power. Abuse is abuse. Abuse is abuse. It has 1,000 different names, but let's just call it what it fucking is, which is abuse. Abuse is abuse. It's rampant, but we cannot use an abuse fear mindset to create peace and love and harmony. We just can't. It's impossible to say, if you're doing this, then you're a part of the problem, to label each other, to cast judgment on each other, to act in any vibration that is lower than complete and total responsibility, acceptance, authority, sovereignty, is to be in lack and fear. Period. You are not allowed to go around being out of integrity anymore. The ascension requires full integrity, which means stepping on people's toes. It's why fearlessness is such a key tenet of superconscious living. You have to be fearless and recognize that people are going to call you horrible names. They are going to send you death threats, which I have received. They are going to literally do everything in their power to oppress you, to silence you, to make you feel small, even though their anger is because they too have been oppressed and feel small. They're just going to do the same thing to you. Until someone finds a solution outside of that construct. And the only way we're going to get there is if more of us in our own daily lives are stepping away from the dichotomy of good and evil and instead accepting the wholeness that, yeah, I am a very privileged white woman, extremely privileged white woman who lives in the suburbs of Salt Lake City, Utah. I don't have any grounds for saying that I could ever comprehend even an iota of what it's like to live as a black man of color in America, because I don't. But my best friend and the godfather of my children is a man of color in America, who I've watched change his life from being a gangster from Compton to serving time in jail to now living an amazing life, traveling, well, right now, maybe not so much, traveling the world, putting on these amazing shows, doing AV tech, connecting with all these people. I've watched someone break the school to prison pipeline in his own life. And guess what? It's because he had to do his own inner work. It had nothing to do with what was going on outside of him, even though he knows that there's a huge problem bigger than himself. He knew it took bettering himself before he was ever going to be able to enact change in his community. And I'm the same way. I have to better myself. I absolutely need to get more comfortable with having uncomfortable conversations about race and gender and politics and religion and all of the things that cause conflict. Because conflict is, again, only those of us, it's claiming that you're the victim. Because you refuse to be the perpetrator, because if you perpetrate against the tribe, you're out on your ass. This is so deep, so ingrained in us, that this is a global thought process. I can't be the perpetrator, therefore I must be the victim. It's the reason why the immediate response to Black Lives Matter is all lives matter. Blue lives matter. Because no one is going to be willing to take 50% fault or 82% fault or any of that. What has to happen, what you must do in your own personal life as a super conscious leader, someone who's living super consciously and embodying the tenets of I believe and I can see a world that is so much bigger, brighter, and more brilliant than the one I'm in right now, and I will do whatever it takes, no matter what, every single day of my life to fearlessly step into that life, that world that we live in, and create the structures and really make it a tangible place and no longer this kingdom in our minds that we're not actually living in. The kingdom to heaven is here already, guys. It's that not many people are willing to open their eyes and accept and love that they are living already in the kingdom of heaven. That they are already experiencing creation constantly by moving thoughts into the physical realm and creating them. Thoughts are things. Using your emotions to move from the mental to the physical and create what you have in your life. So if you're constantly worried and you're constantly thinking about negative things, then you're going to be constantly creating those things in your life. That's Law of Attraction 101. And yet we can't seem to take these things that we apply to our lives and our businesses and blow them up to the bigger proportion, which is what we need to do to get the rest of the masses on board. If you have ears to hear and eyes to see, then you absolutely should be in my leadership group helping spread this message. There's really no excuse, especially now. We are really, really being called to declare what sort of earth we want to live in. We are being called to declare and to make decrees that we are no longer willing to settle for playing the victim. That we are willing to take 100% responsibility in all conflicts. That there is always blame to be passed around, and instead of passing around blame, I will take 100% of the burden. 100% of the fault is mine. And I will also commit to 100% finding the solution and the resolution. That I will do whatever it takes no matter what until the solution is found. And doing whatever it takes often means asking outside of myself. It means having uncomfortable conversations. It means streaming and channeling consciousness and codes and dragons and inner earth beings and intergalactic beings and doing the actual work of moving the frequency of the earth to higher planes of consciousness. We know how fear works. We've been there forever. We even know how conscious living works. We've been there for the last 50 or so years. What does super consciousness look like? If our brains have created all of the problems that we have right now, what brains do we need to have? What mind do we need to have to create the solutions? More conflict, more war, more anger, more abuse, more blaming isn't going to solve anything, ever. Transcending duality has to occur within yourself first. You must first be able to take yourself from believing that there is something different that could be done in your own life, that there is something more that you desire. And it means going out there and feel wobbly and scattered and I'm not sure what I'm doing and I know that this is what I want and why isn't it happening enough, and falling on your face and being like a little kid learning how to ride a bicycle. And then you get into this breakdown where you realize that everything that you have ever known is a lie. And that you have to decide what your standards are. You have to decide what integrity means to you. You have to decide what you're willing to stand for and what you're willing not to. You have to decide when you're going to sit down and shut up and when you're going to take a stand and say something. And then you sit there realizing that that's what you have, is that choice. To either sit in the goo knowing that there's a problem, knowing that you actually have the solution to it, but you're just terrified to take it. And eventually just taking that step, just one step at a time, just the next right thing for you, the next thing that keeps you in integrity with your own standards. And then you realize that by doing that, you are a part of something so much bigger than you. That your story, that your voice is being added to a chorus of living angels here on earth who are really doing this work. But so many are still so afraid to come out and do something like this and be live on YouTube and Instagram and Facebook and all over social media, to be willing to have the messages that I receive and the comments that happen and all of the things that I could play a victim in my life about. But I don't, because I know that there is no one and no thing that has power over me. I did a whole live stream last week about that topic and how perfect that that's what that topic was last week. And then this whole situation happened. And all I can do is sit there in gratitude for George Floyd for being willing to play the role so that such hidden emotion that was laying under the surface, that was ready to bubble. And it's like a 1950s dad who's just ready to pop, and finally that dish being out of place is what sends him through the roof. That's all this has been. It's been going on. We know this. It's that coronavirus brought us together for the first time as a human race. For the first time, it didn't matter if you were poor or if you were rich or if you were black or Latino or white. You were getting the same virus. We were all in lockdown together. We were all dealing with the same crazy pandemic simultaneously, and it unified us. It unified us. Even though we were separate. So of course, as soon as we start lifting those bands and coming out into our world, the first thing that's going to happen is us to remember, wait, no, out in the world, it's dangerous. Out there in the world, we're separate. Out there in the world, there's conflict. No, it doesn't have to be that way. We get to choose differently. We get to say, no, I will not be divided against my brothers and sisters. No, I will take a stand for what I know in my heart is the right thing for not just myself or my family, but for the entire human race. When you're living super consciously, when you're leading a life where you're able to command the energy of your emotions, to not come onto your platform and rage out for 30 minutes, or to just sit silently because you're afraid of how it's going to affect your brand. Because both sides are possible things that could happen. When you're able to go through your own personal emotions, go through your own integrity and say, is speaking on this subject in integrity of with who I am as a person, with what I am as a leader, and in how I serve the world. And if the answers to those questions are yeah, even though this conversation is really fucking uncomfortable, all of those things I am in integrity with, if I speak up, then you're out of integrity when you don't. So, yes, we were 30 minutes late, and this is a 30-minute video. I'm feeling really good about it. Make sure that you check the links in the bio or below for YouTube once this ends to check out the Superconscious Leaders. The cart does close today, so make sure you jump on that. And I will love to see you guys in there. You will have the access to the whole process, the entire process of to live superconsciously in every area of your life, your whole entire life in alignment with your unique frequency of really and truly just emanating love consciousness, of emanating creation consciousness, and understanding that destruction is a part of creation. And that duality is something that we are actually capable of transcending. Okay, so I'm going to just make sure that there's no weird comments or questions real quick. I love you all. Thanks for being here today. It's been interesting dealing with the YouTube thing. Instagram, I love you. I'm going to let you go. Talk to you soon. Check over here to make sure. Okay. What is happening? Yeah, okay. I love you all. Thanks so much. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. If you need anything, feel free to reach out. I love you so much, and have just a beautiful day.